The messaging platform figured out the value of privacy a long time ago. If you want to know why Mark Zuckerberg is suddenly so interested in privacy, I have one word for you: data. Mark makes decisions based on data and not values, a person familiar with Facebook's inner workings said when I asked about the chief executive's stunning about face this week on the new trajectory of the social media industry. He pretty much found it. I would bet a lot that Mr. Zuckerberg saw the data I have seen that shows that the future is not looking good for the bloated, oversharing, fake news spewing, Russian-infected Big Blue app that made him both rich and powerful and, now, quite vulnerable. And what do those numbers say? Well, first and foremost that social media is in big trouble with the young and that it is long past time for it to shift to a privacy-oriented stance that was never part of its DNA, except perhaps as a throwaway line in a news release. While Facebook has always insisted otherwise, its commitment to protecting the information of users has been weak at best since its very founding. But now Mr. Zuckerberg has written a blog post, with not one single trace of irony and with nary a mention of the many privacy abuses he has presided over, announcing that the company would be betting big on private messaging and protected communications for its billions of users. You know, like Snapchat, but on a Facebook scale. Over the years, Facebook has swiped many nifty ideas from Snapchat, the ephemeral messaging platform, which Mr. Zuckerberg actually tried to buy many years ago when it was still a startup. That has been especially true at the Facebook-owned Instagram, which did a wholesale shoplift of Snapchat's stories by creating, wait for it, Instagram stories. In a podcast interview with me, the Instagram co-founder and former chief executive Kevin Systrom did not even bother to hide the act. He said that he admired the creativity of Evan Spiegel, the Snapchat founder, and that taking a good idea and making it better was a thing that always happened in tech. He compared the stories feature to a car radio that Instagram had simply improved on. Indeed it did, and it has been a huge hit for Facebook. That's fair enough, I guess. But this time Mr. Zuckerberg is pilfering so much more, sketching out a future business that looks a lot like Snapchat, with a little bit like China's WeChat mixed in. And, mostly, not at all like Facebook. The big takeaway is that the penny has finally dropped with Mr. Zuckerberg that messaging and social media are very different to users, as much as he has tried to force them into an unholy mush. All you would have to do to figure that out is ask my 16-year-old. But I recently saw some internal Snapchat data that drove this message home using data from both Snapchat and Facebook ad managers. It showed that Snapchat ads reach more 13 to 24-year-olds in the United States than ads on Facebook, Instagram and Messenger combined. Among 13 to 17-year-olds, the delta is even wider. Even if those are Snapchat stats, it is clear that the young demographic that Facebook covets doesn't much care about public sharing via posting. If it did, would Mr. Zuckerberg have seen the need to make this announcement? He would not, since the ad-heavy Facebook bulletin board is still a huge moneymaker, and it's much harder to make such scratch from a business focused on private messaging. That has been one of the problems of Snapchat, which is much smaller than Facebook, as well as internal missteps caused by a rotating series of managers and strategies. But Mr. Spiegel's idea, that people care a lot about privacy and don't want the information they upload to be sold like a Christmas pig, remains a stellar one. Ironically, Mr. Zuckerberg may turn out to be the one who can make it profitable. So indulge me for a minute with a comparison: Mr. Zuckerberg is to Bill Gates as Mr. Spiegel is to Steve Jobs. Mr. Jobs always had better ideas and vision than Mr. Gates. But Apple spent a long time in dire straits while he pushed his high-level concepts about security, privacy, and design and simplicity. Mr. Gates, on the other hand, was an unqualified genius at business models and systems, and he clearly understood the depressing truth that good enough was good enough for a lot of consumers. Of course, Mr. Jobs' stunning creativity eventually won out, with the advent of the iPod, which was soon followed by the iPhone, and, well, the rest is history. Mr. Gates and his number two at Microsoft, Steve Ballmer, scoffed at the efforts of Apple before trying to backpedal furiously. It did not work. Remember the Microsoft Zune? Me neither. In a podcast interview last year, Mr. Zuckerberg name-checked Mr. Gates as an important mentor, and he has obviously learned well. He has already shown a talent for turnarounds, shifting the company from desktop to mobile in one of the most impressive management moves in tech history. While he stumbled at first by doing a Facebook phone, I don't remember that either. The deft Mr. Zuckerberg quickly recovered and the company has never looked back. And now this, a chance to leave behind all the headaches that come with running an enormous public platform. As I have said before, Facebook is like a megapolis, presided over by Mr. Zuckerberg. Managing it is hard, because it needs a strong police force and competent people to pick up the garbage and working sewers, and there are bad people all over the place. While the growth of this city, let's call it Zucktown, has been impressive, it has also been sloppily managed in ways that have hurt society. Maybe the Facebook of the future will be different. That could be a very good thing for the world, and I'm glad that Mr. Zuckerberg seems to have decided that the map laid out by Snapchat is the one to go with, even if he didn't give Snapchat any credit for it. One person I spoke with likened Mr. Zuckerberg to a captain who has decided not to go down with a ship that has sprung some serious leaks. He's just going to jump to another ship rather than fix the first one. And keep on going. I guess there is not much else to say but, Godspeed, Mark.